You are looking at a flame. Maybe it's a campfire, maybe it's a fireplace, or a gas ring on the stove, or one candle on a table nobody has cleared yet. The flame moves and you follow it, and somewhere in the middle of that, without deciding to, you stop thinking. Your shoulders come down, your jaw lets go. Someone says your name and it takes you a full second to come back into the room. Nobody taught you to do that. That pull is older than farming, older than every language on Earth, older than your species. It has been happening in the dark for more than 1 million years, and your body still runs the program tonight, in a heated room, in a city, with the door locked. Here is the part that should bother you. You already hold a light in your hand almost every night. It glows, it flickers. You stare into it in the dark for an hour before sleep, exactly the way your ancestors stared into theirs. And you do not come away calm. You come away wired and hollow, and somehow more tired than when you started. Your ancestors had something that switched their whole nervous system off at the end of every single day. You replaced it with something that does the opposite, and nobody told you that a trade had been made. Start with how old this is, because the age of it is the whole argument. Deep inside Wonderwerk cave in South Africa, far past the point any wildfire could have reached on its own, there are burned bones and layers of ash. Recent work on that cave pushes the fire use there back beyond 1 million years. That is not a lightning strike sweeping through an open plain. That is fire carried inward, on purpose, into the dark, and then kept alive. At a lakeside site in Israel called Gesher Benot Yaakov, burned wood and burned seeds and cracked heat-shocked flint sit clustered in small patches, roughly 790,000 years old. And the clustering is the whole point. The burning is not smeared across the site. It happens in spots. Somebody chose where. Then, at Qesem cave, also in Israel, there is a hearth about 300,000 years old that was used again and again and again in the same place across generations. Ash resting on ash, thin as pages, a fixed address for the fire. Sit with what a fixed hearth actually means. Not warmth, not safety, not light. It means a place everybody knows to be after dark. Your species invented the meeting point before it invented the wheel. So what happened at that meeting point? The famous answer is food. The researcher Richard Wrangham has argued for years that cooking is the thing that made us human, that heat breaks food down before your gut has to, so a smaller intestine and a larger, hungrier brain suddenly become affordable. It's a strong idea. Much of it holds up. But notice what it explains. It explains your stomach. It explains your skull. It does not explain, even slightly, why you go quiet when you look at a flame. For that, you have to look at what people actually do around fires, and someone did. The anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years with the Juohansi in the Kalahari, and she did something nobody had bothered to do. She recorded conversations by time of day, daytime talk and firelight talk, side by side, the same people, over 170 conversations. Daytime talk was almost entirely business. Who was going where, who did not share what they promised, complaints, arguments, land, hunting plans, and a steady current of criticism aimed at anyone getting above themselves. It was useful. It was also a little exhausting. Then the sun went down, and the same mouths did something else. At the fire, the talk turned. It went to stories, to people who weren't there and people who were dead, to singing and to the spirit world, and to long tellings about ancestors nobody in that circle had met. The arguments of the afternoon got smoothed over rather than prosecuted. Nobody was solving anything. Everybody was imagining together. That is the twist, and it is easy to read past it, so slow down here. Fire's real gift was not heat. It was not eating the cooked meat. It was a fourth block of time in the day that had no work in it. Before fire, the day had 3 parts, and all 3 of them were spent staying alive. Find food, eat, sleep. The dark was simply a lid closing. Fire pried the lid up and made a room under it, 3 or 4 hours long, that could not be used for foraging, could not be used for hunting, could not be used for travel. Hours with no possible productive use. And into that useless space, a species poured stories, music, gossip about distant relatives, laughing, and the slow repair of the day's small injuries. Everything you think of as culture grew in the one part of the day when nothing could be achieved. And your body learned to expect that room. This is the part that has actually been measured. A researcher named Christopher Lynn ran a set of studies with more than 200 adults, and he took the fire apart to see which piece was doing the work. Some people watched a fire with the sound turned off. Some watched the same fire with the crackle left in. Some got a control with no fire at all. Then he checked their blood pressure. The muted fire did very little. The fire with its sound in it brought blood pressure down, and it brought it down further the longer people sat with it. The effect was strongest in people who fall easily into absorbed states, and strongest in the people who lean most toward others. So it was never the picture of a flame. A photograph of fire is not the thing. What calms you is the whole animal experience of it. Moving light, and the popping and radiant heat on the front of your body while your back stays cool, and the shape of other people sitting in a ring at the edge of it. Your nervous system is not reading a flame. It is reading a situation, and the situation says, the day is finished, everyone is here, nothing more is required of you. Now look at the thing in your hand. It has the flicker. It kept exactly one piece and threw away all the rest. Light with no warmth. Sound that arrives sealed inside your ears instead of filling a space around you. Faces, but no bodies, and none of them are actually in the room. Information where the story used to be. And instead of a circle of people who all agreed the day was over, one person, alone, horizontal, in the dark. Then there is the last difference, and it may be the worst one. A fire ends. It burns down whether you want it to or not. The talk gets slower as the light gets lower, and eventually there are only embers, and the ending is decided by physics and not by your willpower. Your feed has no embers. It cannot burn down. There is no point at which the wood runs out and your body is allowed to believe the day is complete. So when you're lying there at 1 in the morning, unable to power down, knowing exactly what you should do and doing the other thing anyway, understand what is actually happening. That is not a character defect. That is not weak discipline. You are a creature whose off switch was never installed on the inside. It was external. For 1,000,000 years it sat in the middle of camp. It was made of wood. It was tended by whoever was awake, and it went out on its own schedule. You never needed the strength to end your own day. You just had to sit near the thing that ended it for you. Then, in about 2 generations, we took the fire out of the middle of the room, replaced it with a rectangle that never goes out, and started calling the resulting exhaustion a personal failing. The inheritance is still there, though. That's the good news, and it is smaller and easier than the wellness industry would like it to be. It doesn't take a campfire. A candle counts. The gas ring counts. A fireplace, a fire pit, a stove flame with the kitchen light off. What seems to matter is that it moves, that you can hear it, that it warms the front of you, and that if at all possible, somebody else is sitting there too, not fixing anything, talking about people who aren't in the room. You are not treating a symptom when you do that. You are giving a very old body the one signal it has been waiting all day to receive. So tonight, if you get the chance, let something burn. Sit closer than you need to. Let the talk go somewhere useless. And when the moment comes that you stop thinking and your shoulders drop, and it takes you a second to hear your own name, don't apologize for drifting. Nobody taught you to do that. Something 1,000,000 years older than you already knew the way home. Your throat tightens, your eyes sting, and you look away, fast, so nobody sees. You are one of 8 billion members of a species that leaks salt water from its face when it feels too much. No other animal on Earth does this. Not the chimp, not the wolf, not the elephant. Only you. And somewhere along the way, you were taught that this ancient, uniquely human thing is a weakness to hide in a bathroom stall. But here's the loop I want you to hold until the end. Your tears were never meant to be private. They were built to be seen. And once you understand why, you may never apologize for them again. Let's go back. Every animal with eyes makes tears. This is not the special kind. These are basal tears, a thin film that keeps the eyeball from drying out, and reflex tears, the flood that comes when you chop an onion or dust blows in. Your dog has these. A crocodile has these. They are plumbing, nothing more. Useful, invisible, forgotten the moment they dry. But somewhere in the long stretch of your evolution, as your ancestors' brains ballooned and their societies grew tangled and complicated, something new appeared, a third kind of tear. A tear triggered not by wind or grit, but by feeling, by grief, by overwhelm, by a tenderness so large the body could not hold it in. No one is completely sure when the first emotional tear was shed, but we know it is old, and we know it is only yours.
Charles Darwin puzzled over it in 1872 in his book on the expression of the emotions. He noticed that weeping seemed to serve no obvious survival purpose, and it bothered him. Why would evolution keep a trait that looks so useless, so fragile, a leaking, blurring, sound-making display right when a creature is at its most vulnerable? Here is the answer he was circling. Picture the world your ancestors lived in. No writing, no hospitals, no words for most of what churned inside a person. You lived in a small band, 40 or 50 people, and your entire life depended on them not abandoning you. A human alone on the ancient savanna was a human who did not survive the week. Not the cold, not the dark, not the things with teeth that hunted in it. Now imagine one of them is in agony. A mother has lost a child. A hunter comes home broken and empty-handed. There are no words deep enough, and even if there were, half the band might not share them. So the body finds another way. The eyes fill, the face crumples, and across the fire, without a single sentence spoken, everyone else knows. That is what a tear is. It is a signal, a flare fired up from the body when language runs out. And here is the part that will stay with you. Emotional tears may be chemically different from the tears an onion pulls out of you. Researchers who study crying, like the Dutch psychologist Ad Vingerhoots, have spent decades on this strange human act, and one recurring idea runs through the work. Emotional weeping is not really about the water at all. It is about the message. A tear is a white flag your body waves that says, without shame, without a word, I cannot carry this alone. Now here's the twist, the thing that flips crying from a flaw into a piece of genius. When you weep hard, your vision blurs. The world goes soft and swimming, and for a moment you cannot see clearly, cannot track a threat, cannot fight, cannot flee. One evolutionary researcher, Oren Hassan, argued that this is not a bug, it is the whole point. Blurred, defenseless eyes are a costly, honest signal. They tell the people in front of you, I have lowered my weapons, I am no threat, I am handing you my guard. It is almost impossible to fake, and that is exactly why it works. A tear is trustworthy precisely because it leaves you undefended.
And there may be something happening inside the water itself. The chemist William Frey spent years collecting human tears in his laboratory, and he found that emotional tears are not identical to the reflex tears an onion causes. They carry more protein. Some researchers have wondered whether crying is, in part, the body flushing something out, though the science there stays cautious and unfinished. What we can say plainly is this: your body treats the tears of grief as a different substance from the tears of a chopped onion. It knows the difference, even when the world tells you there isn't one. And it starts on your very first day. The first thing you ever did, before you could see a face or hold a thought, was cry. It was not sadness. It was a signal, thrown out into the world to a mother you had not yet met, and it worked. She came. She always came. That is the deal your species has run for 2 million years. One of us breaks open, and the rest of us move toward the sound. You have been fluent in this language since before you had a name. Think about what that does to the people around you.
When you cry in front of someone, something in them softens. Their guard drops to meet yours. The urge to compete, to judge, to keep score, quietly dissolves, and an older urge takes its place. Come closer. Help. Stay. Your tears reach into another person and pull gentleness out of them, almost against their will. That is not weakness. That is one of the most sophisticated social tools evolution has ever built, and you were issued it at birth. A snarl pushes others away. A tear pulls them in. For your ancestors, that pull was everything. A person who could signal, I am hurting, I need you, was a person the group gathered around. A person who could not, who hid every wound behind a flat, hard face, was a person slowly drifting to the edge of the firelight. And the edge, back then, was not loneliness. The edge was death. So the ones who cried, who let themselves be seen soft and shaking, were often the ones who were held, fed, guarded through the night, kept. You are descended from the criers, from the ones brave enough to let their faces fall apart in front of the people they loved, and to trust that those people would move toward them and not away. Their openness is in you. It is not a defect in your design. It is a feature, tested across 100,000 generations that kept your bloodline alive. So why does it feel like a defect now? Because the fire is gone. You do not live in a band of 50 who have known you since the day you were born. You cry in a parked car with the engine off, in a shower with the water running so no one hears, alone at 2 a.m. with a screen glowing on your face. Your body still fires the ancient flare, still sends up the signal that means, come closer, help me, but there is no one across the fire to catch it. The message goes out, perfectly formed, into an empty room. And so a system built to summon your whole tribe now just makes you feel ashamed and even more alone than before. It gets worse, because we did not only lose the audience, we built a rule against the signal itself. You were told big kids don't cry. You were told to toughen up, to keep it together, to not make a scene, to save it for later. A whole culture quietly agreed that this 2 million-year-old survival tool is something embarrassing, something to strangle in your throat before anyone notices. And every single time you swallow it down, you are overriding one of the oldest and wisest instincts your species owns, and calling that self-control. So let me hand you something, gently. The next time your eyes sting and your throat closes and that old flare tries to rise, you do not have to fight it. It is not you falling apart. It is you doing the very thing that kept 100,000 generations of humans alive enough to make you. It is your body being honest in the one language that is older than words, older than names, older than the fire itself. And you were never designed to do it in a locked bathroom, muffling the sound, hoping it passes before someone knocks. You were designed to be seen doing it. So the next time your throat tightens and your eyes sting, don't look away. That is not weakness leaking out of you. That is the oldest signal your species has ever sent, asking, the way it always has, to not be carried alone. Your hand is in a drawer. You are holding a cable. You do not know what it connects to. You have not used it in 4 years, and some quiet part of you already knows you never will, but you cannot drop it. Your fingers close around it, and a small voice in your chest says, keep it. What if you need it someday? Now zoom out. For roughly 300,000 years, members of your species owned almost nothing. Every object a human possessed had to earn its place, because every object had to be carried on a human back across miles of open ground. And yet here you stand, the descendant of those weightless people, in a home holding thousands of objects, unable to release one dead cable into a trash can. Why does letting go hurt? Your brain believes something about that cable, something that was absolutely true for your ancestors and is almost never true for you. Hold that thought, because by the end of this, you will understand why the ache is real, why it is ancient, and why it was designed to be there. Start with the world your body still thinks it lives in. Your ancestors were mobile. Hunter-gatherer bands moved with the seasons, following water, following animals, following ripening plants. Anthropologists who lived with the Juahansi people of the Kalahari, one of the best documented foraging societies on Earth, recorded something that shocked them. A person's possessions were so few that they could be gathered in minutes and carried without strain. A digging stick, a bow, a few containers, some ornaments. That was a life. And this was not poverty. Researchers like Richard Lee found that these foragers met their needs with only a few hours of work a day, and some anthropologists went as far as calling them the original affluent society. They were not rich in things. They were rich in the absence of things. So how did people who owned a handful of objects become people who rent storage units for objects they never see? Here is the first clue. When you own almost nothing, every single object is life support. A cutting edge is not clutter. It is tomorrow's meal. A water container is not a knickknack. In the dry season, it is the difference between crossing the land and dying on it. Lose your fire kit on a cold night, and the night gets very long and possibly very final. In that world, losing a thing could cost vastly more than the thing itself. Your brain kept score of that math. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed in some of the most replicated work in behavioral science that human beings feel losses far more intensely than equivalent gains. Losing something hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. They called it loss aversion, and it is not a quirk. It is a survival setting. And it goes further. In a famous series of experiments, researchers handed people ordinary coffee mugs, and within minutes, the new owners demanded roughly twice as much money to give up a mug as other people were willing to pay to get one. Nothing about the mug had changed. Ownership changed the brain. The moment a thing becomes yours, your mind quietly reclassifies it. This is part of my survival kit now.
Scientists call it the endowment effect. Your garage calls it that box you haven't opened since 2 moves ago. Nature had already run this experiment, by the way. High in the mountain forests, a gray bird called the Clark's nutcracker buries thousands of pine seeds every autumn and remembers enough of the hiding places to eat through the winter. Squirrels do it, jays do it. When winter is real, keeping is not a disorder. Keeping is genius. Your lineage simply learned the trick late and then learned it far too well. Do you see the trap forming?
You carry a mind built for a world where objects were rare, hard to make, and life-critical. And you woke up in a world where objects are endless, nearly free, and mostly meaningless. The alarm that once guarded a fire kit now guards a drawer of dead cables. The circuit did not change. The world did. Watch it work in the old world for a moment. Dawn on a dry savanna. Orange sky, long shadows. The band is moving camp today, heading toward the river country, and a woman kneels by the ashes of last night's fire, deciding what comes and what stays. She lifts a scraping stone, worn smooth by her own hands over 2 seasons. Stone this good took a full day of searching to find. She weighs it in her palm. Every item she takes, she must carry for 3 days of walking, and every item she leaves, she may never replace. Her daughter watches. This is the lesson. You keep what keeps you alive, and you release everything else, because carrying has a cost of its own. Weight was the original clutter. Her people solved it every single time they moved. Then, around 12,000 years ago, the walking stopped. Farming arrived, and with it came houses, granaries, walls. For the first time in the history of your lineage, a human being could accumulate more than a human back could carry, and the cost of keeping things quietly fell toward 0. Keep a broken pot, and it costs you nothing. Keep a jar of seed grain, and it might carry your family through a failed harvest. Storage stopped being impossible and started being wisdom. The people who kept things survived the bad years. The people who kept things became your ancestors. And here is the twist. You have probably been told that hoarding is the ancient instinct, some deep caveman greed for piles of stuff. It is almost exactly backwards. Your deepest ancestors were the most ruthless declutterers who ever lived, because their own legs kept them honest. What is ancient is not the pile. What is ancient is the pain of loss, the alarm that fires when something leaves your hand forever. For 300 millennia, that alarm was priced for a world where a lost tool could mean a lost life. Then storage became free. The alarm never got the memo, and the pile is simply what happens when an ancient alarm meets an endless supply. So look at your home again with those eyes. This is why throwing away feels like danger, while acquiring feels like nothing. Gaining was always the cheap part for your brain. Losing was always the expensive part. This is why just in case feels so convincing. On the savannah, just in case was frequently correct. This is why it is so much easier to carry a bag into the house than to carry one out. And you are not imagining the weight of it all. Researchers at UCLA who studied ordinary families in their own homes found that living surrounded by dense clutter measurably raised stress in the people who had to manage it. The savannah solved clutter with distance. Your house has no 3rd day of walking. But notice something gentler underneath all of this. The box of your grandmother's letters, your child's first drawings, the ticket stub from a night that changed your life. When your hand refuses to release those, that is not a malfunction either. In a forager band, objects were rare enough that a carried thing meant something. This came from someone. This holds a story. This is who we are. An heirloom is ancient technology for holding on to people who are gone. Your brain is not confused about those letters. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do, keeping the dead close to the fire a little longer. So what do you do with a drawer full of alarms? You do not need to become a monk, and you do not need another storage bin. You need to renegotiate with a very old guard. When you hold an object and feel that flare of, what if I need it? Name what is actually happening. That is loss aversion. That is a Stone Age price tag stuck on a modern trinket, and the price is wrong. Then ask the forager's question instead. Not, could this ever be useful, because almost anything could. Ask, would I carry this on my back for 3 days to keep it? Your ancestors asked that question every time they moved, and it kept their lives light enough to survive. And be kind about the rest. You are not lazy, you are not broken. You are running scarcity software in a world of abundance, and the guilt you feel about the clutter is just the collision of those two worlds, happening quietly in your chest. So go back to the drawer. Your hand is around the cable again, and the small voice says, what if? This time, you know how old that voice is.
You know what it was built to protect, and you know that the danger it remembers is gone. Think it. It kept your people alive for 300,000 years. Then open your hand.